Hey guys, welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to talk about how to find your first job in aviation, what jobs there are, whether you can get a job as a private pilot, what are the jobs you can get as a commercial pilot. Make sure you stay tuned. I'm going to share some secret tips on how to get you that first phone call from the employer. Hey guys, welcome to my channel. For those of you new to the channel, my name's Omar. I'm a 20-year flight instructor. I've got about 20,000 hours of flight time, former airline captain, current flight school owner, and I've been working on getting my A&P license for the past 3 years. Today I'm going to talk about how to find a job, I guess your first job in aviation. I started off obviously as a student pilot a long time ago, progressed onto CFI, and then regional pilot, and then now I'm a flight school owner. So I've had a lot of different perspectives on how to look at things, and I want to kind of help you guys tune into what I look for when hiring a candidate. That'll help you guys maybe get the phone call you're looking for. So let's get started. All right guys, so the number one question I always get asked is, what job can I get with a private pilot's license? And the answer is nothing. There is no job that you can get with your private pilot's license. The reason I get asked that, I'm pretty sure, is because most people correlate your private pilot's license to flying private planes like a private jet. That's not the case. Your private pilot's license basically just lets you fly as a hobby. The closest you can get to something like that is sharing flight time, or sharing the cost of flight time. So for example, if you wanted to fly with your buddy from here to another airport and you guys decide you're going to split the cost down the middle, you can do that. That's legal. You cannot accept compensation for hire type of work with a private pilot's license. Okay, so now we're going to talk about your first opportunity to work in aviation. Now, right after you get your commercial license, you're probably going to have right around 250 hours or so. Some of the opportunities that are going to be available to you at that point are going to be flight instructing, skydive pilot, banner tower, aerial photography. Now, these jobs are typically known not to pay very well. You can't really sustain yourself and earn a living at these jobs. So most people are kind of in a rush to build their flight time up to around 1,500 hours is where the opportunity to work as a regional pilot or a corporate pilot open up. So basically the goal is, how do I get to 1,500 hours as quickly as possible? The way that I recommend you do that is become a flight instructor. That's probably going to be the quickest way to build flight time. I've seen flight instructors at a decent school doing 90, 100 hours a month if you're at a really good, busy school. On the low end, maybe 50 hours a month at a slower flight school. And then if you're doing other types of jobs like aerial photography, banner towing, typically flying about 25 hours a month is pretty typical. So if you're flying at a busy school at 100 hours a month, you can quickly build up 1,200 hours a year. If you're starting at about 250, 300 hours, it's going to take you about a year to get to that 1,500 hours. So what jobs are available after about 1,500 hours? If you're curious about pay in the industry, I'm going to go into detail about that in a special video that I'm going to make. The link will be in the description. I highly recommend you go watch that video and you can see how much pilots make at different various jobs. But as far as 1,500 hours, so right around that point, you're going to have some doors opening up for you. All right, so what are the jobs available at roughly about 1,500 hours? There's the regional airlines, you've got corporate aviation, and you've got small cargo outfits. Keep in mind, the small cargo outfits are not to be confused with FedEx or UPS. We're talking strictly smaller cargo operations. Regional airlines, so how do you get a job at the regional airlines? Apply. They all have websites. Go on their website, dust off your resume, make sure it looks professional. If this is your first time actually applying for a professional job, it would definitely be worth doing a little bit of research and making sure your resume looks presentable. I do get instructors that apply for jobs at my school, and to be quite honest, when the resumes look like they're not really putting any time and effort into it, it goes in the delete box. You don't want that happening to you at a regional airline. So make sure you look professional and presentable on that resume. It's your first impression. The regional airlines, you can't really walk in your resume to those places. You're gonna have to apply online. The other opportunity you have is if you go to a job fair for the regionals, they do exist. They're over at like universities like Embry-Riddle. You can get FaceTime with the recruiters. That'd be a good time to hand them your resume, smile, introduce yourself. Just ask the recruiter, hey, I'd love to fly for the airline. What can I do to be a better candidate to be called for an interview? Corporate jobs, so corporate jobs vary a lot. You're going to get big companies like NetJets, all the way down to smaller outfits at your local airport that's probably got 2 or 3 smaller jets. So with those smaller operations, I do recommend that you possibly apply online, but also walk in and get some FaceTime with maybe the chief pilot, introduce yourself, put a face behind the name. That worked for me when I once was applying for a corporate job. With the bigger companies like NetJets and whatnot, maybe Jet Suite, they've got such large operations that they probably prefer you to submit a resume online, and you probably won't have the opportunity to walk into their corporate office and just say, hey, here's my resume. So with those, you have to pick and choose based off the one that's right for you. Your third one is a cargo operation. So just like how United Airlines and Delta Airlines have regional airlines that feed passengers to them, so does cargo. UPS and FedEx has cargo feeders. One of the big ones is called Ameriflight. If you log on to Ameriflight's website, their hiring minimums is just 500 hours total time for their Brasilia, the EMB 120. I flew that plane for about 3 years for SkyWest. I loved flying that airplane. It's a really fun airplane to fly. 500 hours of total time, CFI preferred. So you may want to consider still getting your CFI if you're planning to do that. Now keep in mind, if you look at their hiring requirements for captain, or in other words, upgrading to captain, if you do get hired at Ameriflight at 500 hours, you're gonna need to wait till you get to 3,000 hours of flight time to become a captain. Now, you're typically flying about 500 hours a year at Ameriflight. So if you need to build up, you need to get up to 3,000 hours and you have 2,500 hours, you're gonna be there for quite some time till you get to apply to captain at Ameriflight. The good news is though, because the mainline carriers are so desperate for pilots, for the past couple of years, I have seen them hire in great numbers without that coveted PIC time, turbine PIC time, captain time turbine aircraft. So you might get lucky and get hired at United without even upgrading to first captain at Ameriflight. So most of you, your main goal is to get a job at a major airline because that's where the big bucks are. So I want to talk a little bit about a subset of major airlines. So you've got your major airlines like Frontier and JetBlue, but you also have United and Delta. So there's a subset within the majors called the legacies. Now the legacy airlines are United, Delta, Alaska, American Airlines, and they've even started to include Southwest Airlines in this. The reason they kind of call those legacies is because of how long they've been around in the industry, as well as, they're the cream of the crop jobs, the top pay, the top benefits. So if you're talking about the majors, sometimes people will talk about United and Delta. They're talking about Frontier or JetBlue. Make sure you kind of understand the difference between those legacies and majors. And there's even a little stepping stone there. There's a lot of people that might go to Frontier Airlines as their first major airline job, and then they are there for about a year or two, and then they go to United or they go to Alaska Airlines. Let's talk a little bit about how to apply for those jobs. So if you're gonna apply to Frontier or American or Delta, you gotta go on their website. If you go on their website, you'll quickly see that 1,500 hours is the minimum time to get hired at United, and you're thinking, holy moly, 1,500 hours? I don't even have to go to the regionals. I can just skip the regionals and from flight instructor to United? No, I'm sorry, you can't do that. You need to have 1,000 hours of turbine time. What is turbine time? Go to Google and type in turbine engine. It's a jet engine. Turboprops use turbine engines. You got to have 1,000 hours of turbine time before you can apply at United or Delta or something like that. How are you going to get that? You're going to have to go to the regionals. So the other thing is are you competitive at 1,500 hours of flight time? The answer is probably not. Do people get hired at 1,500 hours at those places? Yeah, I've seen it. I just recently, last week, I saw a guy who was at SkyWest. He got hired at 1,791 hours of total time at United. Now, he had a military background. He was in the military for quite some time. That plays a major factor in getting hired at United, because when you're talking about military pilots, you're talking about a whole different animal. Their training regimen, everything is different for military pilots. So the answer is, can you get hired? Yeah, but there's a lot of outside factors that play into that. Additionally, a lot of it is your networking, your contacts. Is your neighbor the chief pilot of United Airlines? Well, that's probably going to help you probably get a job at United a lot quicker than the other people. So it's important to note, flight time is not everything. You might meet the minimum qualifications, but there's a lot more that goes into getting a job at these airlines. Go to the job fairs. Highly recommend you go to the job fairs. Get FaceTime with the recruiters. They typically have anywhere from 20 to 30,000 qualified applications on file in their computers at these major airlines. How are you going to get called if they have 20 to 30,000 applications on file? Going to a job fair is one good way of getting your face in front of a recruiter saying, hey, my name is John Smith, or I'd love to fly for United Airlines. This has been my dream since I was a kid. I got into aviation because of United. How can I be a better candidate for United? That starts setting up a relationship with that recruiter. A lot of times that'll get you a phone call. That's a major help. Some of the other requirements that are on the application, for example, is for your degree, it says preferred but not required. And you're asking yourself, well, if it's not required, then I'm not going to get a four-year degree. Again, remember, 20,000 applications on file. A lot of those people, the majority of them, are going to have four-year degrees. Some of them even have master's degrees. So if you put yourself in the employer's shoes and say, well, I've got 20,000 people here to pick from, well, we're going to wipe out all the non-degree holders. We're going to pick the guys with the degrees or the master's degrees and pick from them first. Do people get hired without a degree at United? Of course they do, because like I said, it's all about who you know, not just your flight time. All right, so a bonus tip on how to get yourself recognized and noticed at the major airlines is have an employee walk your resume into the chief pilot's office and recommend you. I can't emphasize enough how important that is to have someone have an internal recommendation. A lot of airlines actually require this at the majors. It doesn't necessarily have to be a pilot walking in your resume to the chief pilot's office. I've had friends that I've known now for 20 years that are at the major airlines. Their parents were flight attendants. Their dads were mechanics for major airlines for 20 years. They're just as qualified to walk into the chief pilot's office and say, hey, I work in the maintenance department for the past 10 or 15 years. My son's applying or my daughter's applying for the pilot position. Can I drop by a resume? And then they start chit-chatting. That's an internal recommendation. So how I did it was I actually knew no one in aviation. So I figured, well, how am I going to get my resume to walk into the pilot's office? I'm going to be the internal recommendation. So I applied for a ramp position for the airlines, and I worked the ramp for a year in the summertime in Palm Springs, 120-degree temperatures, loading cargo bins, until I finally got recognized by the pilots, and they were the ones that gave me the internal recommendation that got me called for the interview. So internal recommendations, they have a huge weight on getting called. I would highly recommend that you have somebody walk in your resume. Thanks for watching this video, guys. If you found the video useful and valuable, please click the like button, subscribe to the channel. It really helps out with the algorithms. My goal is to provide you with valuable content, and I'd love you guys to tune in and watch. Thank you very much.